The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today on May the 4th. We hope May the 4th be with you today. Again, thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is SEO tips for the DIY Jedi. I am your host and moderator for today's webinar. My name is Sunny Nielsen. I am the communications manager here at Boostability. And again, I am your host and moderator. I will be here to help moderate the questions at the end. While everyone is coming on board, it always takes a few minutes. We'd love it if you went ahead and threw in the chat where you're from, hello. We'd love to see, from around the country, around the world, where everyone is coming in from so that we can see all the great places that we are connecting from. We are based here, our headquarters is in Utah. So we hope everything is as bright and sunny where you are as it is here in Utah. Our presenter today is Colton Miller. He is our Director of SEO Strategy here at Boostability. And I forgot to share my screen, everyone. Pardon me while I make sure that you guys can see the slides that we're doing. Hello from New Jersey. Can everybody see my screen okay? Hopefully you'll see a nice blue screen that says SEO for the DIY Jedi. Thank you so much for everyone who is jumping on board. If you wish to follow either myself or Colton to ask questions, any follow-up questions, comments, we always love to interact with those that are attending our webinars. You can see at the bottom of the screen our Twitter handles. Colton Miller's Twitter handle is Big C SEO. He is the Director of SEO Strategy here. My name is Sunny Nielsen. I know it's kind of a funny way that it is spelled. It's a Polynesian spelling. And my Twitter handle is the Jolly Polly, and that is why it is the Jolly Polly, as I am Polynesian. Or, of course, you can always follow Boostability, our corporate Twitter handle, which is just at Boostability. Now, a couple of housekeeping items as we move ahead with this. As you saw, there is a chat feature on this webinar. Please feel free to use it, make comments, anything like that. Hello from Boston and hello from New York. We have quite a few people from the East Coast. We're so excited to have you here. You can use the chat feature to make comments. We also have a question section, which I can see you guys have found. If you have questions that come up during the presentation, please feel free to throw them into the questions section. If it is super pressing to the section that Colton is covering at that time, I will try and stop him so that he can make note of that and try and address that question during the presentation. But as much as possible, we do try and hold those questions towards the end of the webinar so that Colton can give you the whole overview of everything related to the DIY SEO. And then at the end, we will go through and try and answer as many questions as we can in the remaining time. So, Colton, are you here with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Wonderful. We have quite a few people on here. We even have some from Seattle and Minnesota. We have people from all over the country with us today. Welcome and thank you for joining us again. Colton, would you like me to hand over the reins to you on the screen, or would you like me to maintain it?
Yeah, send it over.
All right, well, let's change it over. Here we go, Colton. Now, the reins are all yours, and I will let Colton run with this, and I hope you guys enjoy the information that he has.
All right. Well, like Sunny said there, thanks for being here today. We're going to be going over the SEO tips for the DIY Jedi, which is naturally in everyone. So just get started here. You always got to start off with the tools, right? So we're going to cover the tools of the DIY Jedi. To start us off, essentially you have the Boost You or even the Moz resource. This is going to be your training. Every Jedi has to undergo an enormous amount of training. SEO certainly is no different. In courses like this or even just programs like that, you're going to have introduction to SEO. So even if you don't know what SEO is, you can always get in there and essentially dive in from the very beginning and find out what's pertinent and where to really start. Secondly, you can get in there, and it is constantly getting curated, for accuracy. So you never have to worry about getting in there and seeing content that is either really outdated or no longer relevant. And that is, of course, being authored by experts with data. So usually when you're looking at those courses, especially with something like the Boost U or the Moz, it is being tailored to what the industry standards are and what is actually working, backed up by data, right? So you're not going to be getting any, fuzzy stuff or something that really doesn't make sense or something that's maybe outdated as well. Of course, there are advanced resources as well, so if you know quite a bit or you've been in the industry a long time, there's always something new happening, whether it's a new subset of data has been released or a new test that somebody's done. And so it's really good areas to essentially go and find more advanced resources or more advanced knowledge. Of course, with both areas, there's a vast community, so you can always talk to other people that are, other peers that are in the field, different people that are in different roles, from doing the actual link building to either, maybe directing on some strategy or even, maybe on the forefront of creating content and exploring that. So there's always an opportunity to get in front of somebody where their actual job is maybe 100% or even majority of what you might have a question about or looking for. And then, of course, the last one is, on those platforms, you're always going to be seeing new tools, new research, new data, just essentially new stuff that's being produced by people within that industry. So, and again, that's your training. It's very core. Everybody has to do it. So good places to go, Boost U and Moz. Next up would be your lightsaber. It's probably the most iconic aspect of any Jedi. It's also the most useful tool in a Jedi's arsenal. And essentially the way that the Google Keyword Planner can help you is by helping you understand the potential interest that you might have in an area. So if you're, let's say that you're searching for something like electrical engineering and you're just not seeing it in your area, you might have a lot of people that maybe just don't use a particular phrase the way that you're putting it in, or there might just not be a ton of search volume in that area, and that might change how you maybe approach offering it. Maybe you have to go with something maybe a little bit broader, or maybe become a resource instead of trying to do the work, maybe become more of an informational hub. But essentially it starts you out by helping you understand what that potential interest is in the area. Second off, it shows your competitors and comparable, services or offers that are out there. By seeing what keywords are out there, you can essentially search those on Google, and then you can start seeing who's out there already, how many people are actually competing for the business, and what are they actually offering. Are they offering something that, maybe you're not, or are they offering the same thing, but they're saying it slightly different? So it essentially gives you the starting grounds of figuring out who's in your area and really what they're doing and who your actual competition is online. And then the last part to that is that it helps guide your content as well as your potential user flow or even your user intent. You may find some keywords that, man, they seem like solid keywords, but they might not convert as well or might not fit your service as well. And vice versa. You might have keywords in there that you never even thought to conceive or even think of, but that might be what people are referring to it often. And so that obviously can then go and tailor your content and tailor everything that you might have on your website. You may want to do videos instead, because that might be what your potential audience is searching for. So obviously you got your lightsaber there. Next one, iconic to almost any Jedi, is the starship. Now obviously the starship, that's what gets the vehicle or gets the Jedi around the galaxy. And obviously something like BuzzSumo is the same thing for SEOs. It helps you discover content, both topics and ideas. It can help you find out the right kind of content as well, the content that has essentially either been shared in the past or is currently getting a fair amount of shares. It also helps you understand who the influencers are. So who are the people that you essentially need to either tailor your content for, or who you can approach with your content. Say, hey, this is really fantastic. I think you'll like it a lot. If you do, please share it. And obviously have them help drive your content, and that can lead to all sorts of stuff. Links, more potential users on the site, maybe more trust on the site as well, and maybe just even more interaction on the site. And then lastly, which of course is probably the biggest reason that I would recommend using something like BuzzSumo, would be to actually help you create content and help you create content that can actually beat what is doing well. content is fantastic, but having content that either has a purpose or a greater purpose is what you really want to strive for when it comes to creating it. So being able to see what's been successful and how you could potentially either merge things or how you can simply add on top of it with your own experience. And then the last one, also pretty iconic, would be the droid. You know, every great Jedi has some sort of droid behind it. You know, droids essentially help guide and troubleshoot issues that Jedis might face or run into, especially technological ones. Something like YouTube is fantastic, a great comparable there where you can view YouTube, tutorials, you can get walkthroughs, maybe even top 10s. You might be trying to either trial something or find a good tool. You might be able to do like a top list or whatever and have somebody actually do a review for you. And then, of course, you have, you know, expert reviews or interviews. You know, they might be interviewing somebody that you really look up to in the industry or somebody that you know has a really good opinion, authoritative opinion about a certain subject within the SEO industry. So YouTube is fantastic in helping, you know, kind of guide your thoughts and guide your actions. And obviously, in the case that you need to learn something new, YouTube's fantastic, I know for me, especially in how you might learn and how you want to essentially see things. So that's the tools of the Jedi. So just to kind of recap, you know, boost you, Moz, make sure you get that training in. After that, you know, you got to get your lightsaber right. You got to get your keyword planner, your keywords, so that way you know what you're working towards, and give you essentially the starting place for SEO. And then BuzzSumo is a great resource like your Starship to essentially figure out where you need to be or where you need to go or what you need to create. And then, of course, the droid that always accompanies that Starship, as well as the Jedi, is YouTube. Just make sure that if you're not sure, you can YouTube it, or you can get more insight into the industry as a whole and get more information. So, you know, once you have the tools of the Jedi, then you essentially have the code of the Jedi. You know, every Jedi lives by the code, and so do SEO experts. So this will be our interpretation of the Jedi Code through, you know, an SEO's eyes. So the very first part of the Jedi Code is that there's no emotion, there is peace. And basically my SEO take on that is SEO takes time. It's a long-term strategy. It's really often, especially if you're talking to either a direct consumer or even if you're potentially talking to other partners or whatever it might be. Oftentimes the time frame really gets shrunk down to, you know, 3 to 6 months or whatever it might be. I think a lot of times, I know especially for me, that we really lose the connection that it's a long-term strategy. It's meant to be a sustained thing, and it's meant to be a very long-term thing. So just to kind of start us off with the long-term strategy, you know, long tail keyword strategy is essentially where you want to start. Probably not new to anybody, but I have a few things that might help. So part of the reason why you want to go after the long tail is essentially it's going to be those easy to obtain or easy to rank keywords naturally. If there's only 10 people searching for it, there's a good chance that you're not going to be competing with 50 other people to try to get that term. So as an example, they also have like a high intent, you know, a good example would be like, you know, Las Vegas lawyer versus something like Chapter 7 bankruptcy lawyer in Las Vegas. Obviously, one of those is getting a lot of searches, but it also doesn't have a whole lot of intent behind it. People are searching that because they're not entirely sure what they're looking for, and then they're going to refine that once they figure out exactly what they want, and those are the people that are more likely than not to actually partake in the service or at least get started down that buying path. Despite the fact that it might not have as much search volume, it definitely has higher intent. And then another thing with long-term long-tail keyword strategy is it can help you really hone in on your content. You may approach a topic way too broad or maybe broad at a certain point, but you really need to hone it in with what people are actually looking for. And so understanding those long-tail keywords can be really good in understanding what content or how you need to tailor your content to satisfy those keywords essentially. Next tip would be, you know, grow your website, grow as your website grows. There's no need to essentially try to go out and spur 100 pages unless you have a real need and a real investment there. You know, grow as you go. You know, keep in mind it's a long-term strategy, so you want to make sure that you're constantly growing and that you're growing steadily, similar to like a tree. You essentially just want to expand your website as you can. So that means if you can dedicate one hour a week, you might be able to create just 1 page a week. But 1 page a week, over 52 weeks, that's 52 pages. And especially if you're in the local space, that can give you a lot of oomph when it comes to competing with maybe bigger brands that maybe don't have as much of a local focus, but might have more authority. And you can kind of do the opposite, where you can have a lot of relevance to a certain area, and have a lot of answers maybe for that more local area that could translate into something maybe a little bit broader later on down the road. Obviously with this, and probably some good ideas when it comes locally, things that you might be able to expand your site with would be things like, either your services, so getting very specific with your services. You'd be surprised how many people are looking for, something very specific within an industry, but we just assume, hey, everybody knows that I happen to do that because I do this. And that's oftentimes not the case. They want the expert who says, hey, this is actually something either I do or something that I specialize in. And it gives them a feel good, and it obviously can lead to more conversions for you down the road. Another thing that essentially can help out with that would be reviews. So you can either have reviews or projects that you've done in the past. It's too often that I see that we take bits and pieces of what we do or what we provide, but we don't really expand on it. How many of you out there have essentially done a job or done a service in the past, but you don't highlight either a customer, every customer, maybe 1 in 100 customers? That's missed content. Even if you're, let's say that you're a landscaper and you're doing 1 job a week where you're going out and you're doing something really difficult, maybe you're doing some rockscaping, whatever it might be, landscaping and some rockscape. Essentially, you want to make sure that you're putting out the projects that you're doing, and you can do that through like pictures, content, videos you might have. You could even have your potential employees or whoever's doing the projects give their input or their feelings about what had to be done and how it got done. And then obviously you can have the customer's interaction as well. So did they like it? If they did like it, what was their actual feedback? Did they really like working with somebody? Did they like working with the company in general? You'd be surprised how much content, and even just a single page or a blog post, that you could get from highlighting 1 single job. And again, that could be per job or per 10 jobs, whatever it might be to scale with your business. FAQs are another one, so frequently asked questions. I know everybody in any industry, everywhere, has those common questions that they might get asked, but you might have those one questions where you only get asked maybe once a year, maybe once every month. Those are questions that I know, especially for myself, where I say, oh, that's common knowledge, or maybe it was just a one-off question. But once you write that down, you put that onto the search engines, you'd be surprised how many people might actually search for that or search for something similar to that you can actually help. Obviously, that goes a long way to helping expand your website, but it also goes a long way to building your trust between you and that particular industry or vertical, or even service or product or whatever it might be. And the last thing, and this is something I know I have a hard time with especially, but it's something everybody's got to get past. A page does not have to be 1,000 words. It doesn't have to be 500 words. Keep it simple. You just want to make sure that you're producing pages that are at least somewhat usable, meaning that somebody somewhere, even if it's 1 person per year, could use, and tailor it to what they might actually need. If they don't need more than a 2-sentence explanation and a picture on something, then don't add more than that. You can always either incorporate that into another page or break it out into its own page if it really is that significant, and if it's something that does make sense logically to be on its own. Another one would be view your analytics on a weekly basis, especially with the long-term sense of things. Again, especially in the local hemisphere that I deal with a lot, it's all too often that either we just install analytics or we just created the website, whatever it might be. Search engines just barely get into it. We don't really have any authority going to the site, stuff like that, and we want to look at analytics. And it's too often that looking at analytics and seeing 10 people came to my website, or nobody came to my website, that can be very discouraging, especially early on. So my first knee-jerk reaction to anybody is, hey, set up analytics, don't look at it for a month, and then come back. Obviously, you want to make sure that you have data that's going to help you out. You want to make sure that you have something that's going to make you excited. Viewing a dashboard day in, day out, and seeing no real progress there could definitely be a damper. But that's where we have to keep in mind. It's the long-term strategy we're going for. So view your analytics at the very least, on a weekly basis, and then increase from there. And if you just started with analytics or you just created the website, I'd recommend waiting a month and then view it on a weekly basis and just roll through it that way. And once you get enough traffic going to the site, then you can look at doing it maybe more frequent, maybe once a day, all the way up to the point where maybe you're looking at it every hour just to see where people are coming in, why they're coming in, and what they're doing on the site, in real time. But that takes a good amount of traffic to start seeing that. So the last thing, especially when you're looking at your analytics, and something that I know we have to do a lot here to either troubleshoot things or try to understand maybe why a page was ranking, maybe it's not the most useful page, is essentially put yourself inside of the user's shoes. And you essentially want to make sure that whatever action you might be trying to complete is something that somebody can actually do some way. So as an example, you might have somebody who's looking to do maybe some research. So they just want to come on, they want to see the top 5 reasons why this is good and maybe the top 5 reasons why this is bad. That page doesn't necessarily have to sell anybody. It just simply has to advise them, and if they want to learn more, send them to another page. Send them further down your buying funnel and further down the path of potentially purchasing from you. At the very least, what that will do, having that good interaction where they get the information quick, and even if they leave a minute in, it's going to allow them to essentially create the trust between your brand and whatever the service or product might be. And they'll remember next time when they say, you know what, I really need this. If they can remember, hey, I've gone to that resource a few times, or I always visit that guy, you can bet that you're going to get a good portion of the business. All right, so next piece of the Jedi Code is there is no ignorance, there is knowledge. You got to determine what assets you need. The truth, and some people say ignorance is bliss, but this couldn't be further from the truth when it comes to SEO. Ignorance allows you to get behind your competitors, and it's not something you want to have happen, especially where organics take a long time, and especially where you have to try to be the thought leader and the first one in the industry to try to do something. So start off, do industry research to see what you might actually need on your website. I always suggest start by looking at what's happening in the industry. So is there a certain trend that's coming up or something that's just kind of a common stance within the industry that you need to cover? Maybe there's new technologies in the field that you need to cover or incorporate, saying, hey, we use this particular machine to do this now, or we have a certain practice that we partake in. You might have trends as well. It might be something where it's just simply trendy, or it might be something that is blowing up because a lot of people, liked it. They saw it on Pinterest or whatever it might be, and so it might be the new hot thing. You got to make sure that you're keeping up with that. Make sure that you keep incorporating that into your website and really within what you're offering your audience. To go with that, like I said, is hot products or services. It's another one of those things where you might think, what, just because I do concrete, I do everything to do with concrete. So people obviously know that I do, concrete contracting is what I do, but they might not see, unless you spell it out, that you actually do like concrete stamping or concrete coloring or whatever it might be concrete-wise, that they may not just automatically assume you do it. So you got to make sure that you're putting yourself out there, especially with those new hot and trending products or services, or even just the way that people might be saying it. That might be a little bit off from how you might refer to it. You've got to make sure that you're matching that to get the most impact, especially within that local hemisphere. And obviously it can have bigger impacts on more of a national platform and national stage as well. So another one is reviewing your competitors to see what's essentially helping them. Oh, skipped ahead a little bit. So yeah, you got to review those competitors, and that's probably one of the most underutilized things that at least I see within the industry, and especially within even the national sphere, but more the local sphere, is that it's too often we say, hey, I don't know what's not working, or I don't know what I really need my website, or I've got a 3-page website, I think I'm fine. Look up your competition. Google some of those keywords, find out who your competition is, view their website, and see what they're actually doing. you'd be surprised how in tune some local companies are with their SEO strategy, and how well they are doing things. And that's not a bad thing. It just simply says, hey, this is what they have, so you need to get what they have essentially and do it better. And you can ask things for like, what's working for them? What's causing them to help rank for this? Or if I do this really long tail query, why is it that they come up, and what comes up? Is it a blog post? Is it a product page? Maybe it's how they cover things. What kind of content do they have? You got to ask those different questions when you do those searches and you find out who's ranking there. And by asking those questions, you can essentially find out what is there, or what should be there, and what you could do. And then you can find out how to do it better. The nice thing about that is that if they're putting all of their information out there and they're saying, hey, here's what it is, you can essentially say to yourself, you know what, I have that same information, or hey, I can create that as well pretty easily. And I can add some stuff to it that's going to make it even better, or I can add something that I always feel is relevant to this particular subject. It's those kind of things that are going to make you not only get the same content, but have better content, and content that can replace those competitors, and obviously get you the rankings and the success and the customers that you're looking for. Another one, and this one is kind of newer age, especially with how prominent reviews are coming and how many platforms there are to leave reviews nowadays. But you want to essentially try to use your own customers to get new ideas. And you can do that from reading reviews. You even want to go out and search for them nowadays. Like I said, there's a lot of platforms and everybody has a different preference. So if you can go out and read a review on Yext as an example, and then go and read one or sorry, not Yext, Yelp as an example, and then go to like Yellow Pages, read one there. Obviously your own website, but then go to Google My Business. You'd be surprised the little nuances and the little ways that people either refer to things, or the way that they might hype your product without it being the same old, I have the world's #1 customer service. Everybody has that. You got to kind of move past it. You got to figure out what's really setting it apart. And so you may, through those reviews, you may be able to find things where somebody's really creative and they have a different tone, and they might have a different way of describing something that you may have never even thought of. And so that's a way that you can essentially take that information and then incorporate it into your pages, and really expand your knowledge and expand the expertise within your own website. Next one on the Jedi Code there is going to be, there is no passion, there's serenity. So create content that outshines what exists today. Content, like I said before, is so common today that you really have to go above and beyond to create something that people actually care to read. You got to make sure that you're making it interesting, unique, and diverse. And I know that's really easy for me to say, but putting it into actual context, and the one that I get all the time is like dentists. How do I spruce up a dentist? How do I make a dentist really shine, right? When there's so many and it's all the same content and it's all been written so many times. So start off, content, it's not just text. You gotta really think outside the box nowadays, and you gotta expand your content, playlist that you might have. Pictures obviously is one, and I think everybody at this point has pictures, just like everybody has content. The one thing about pictures that I think a lot of people underutilize is the different kinds of pictures you might have. If you've got a stock bunch of stock pictures on your site, supplement those or add to those, or even replace some of those with things like projects, befores and afters. Maybe even, here's one that we did a while ago, and here's how well it's maintained its shape, or whatever it might be. Your storefront or your business front. Even if you don't have anything too robust, let's say you don't own a standalone building, doesn't matter. Just the fact that you're proud of what you've built and you're proud of what you have, even the inside of whatever your business might be, can really help people understand, your day-to-day and your business, and the fact that you are, you're a human being, and that you're there to provide the best service you can. Storefronts are really underutilized, and another one is people. It's too often, dentist is kind of the exclusion here, I would say, but it's too often that any sort of business owner either doesn't want pictures of themselves, or they might not want pictures of their employees up there, or they just don't even think about that. So you got to make sure that you're adding those people to your website. Those people are what make your business. They're the heart and soul. You're the heart and soul. So you want to make sure that you're adding that personality to the page. Not to mention, it's unique content that nobody else is going to have. Another one that's becoming more common is videos. but more often than not, it's usually more of an infomercial type site, more of a commercial. And it's great to have one or two of those, but you really want to start to expand that content to like tutorials or maybe even project videos. It could even be reviews, having somebody either review your product on video or going and reviewing somebody who partook in your service. You'd be surprised how much content, again, that you can get from those reviews to help add to your website, but it can also be great for, you know, that video and for essentially having a reason to make a video. If you're in an industry where, you know what, there's really not a whole lot I can say about, you know, let's just say, you know, landscaping. There's really not a whole lot I can say outside of, hey, I replaced your grass. But you'd be surprised by doing a review, especially like a video one, how people can express, you know, what that allows my kids to play outside. It allows my dogs to play outside without coming in all muddy. It also is nice to go out there and it helps maybe control some pests, whatever it might be. There's all those unique things that you're not going to get if you're just saying, you know what, you know, here's the content, and the content is I replace grass or whatever it might be. Another form of content that you can have out there would be like white papers, ebooks, PDFs. So something that essentially can be shared or taken as a document that can still be crawled by search engines, everything like that. They'll still recognize that if it's a good resource, they'll actually even recommend it. So those things, even though you're putting them into a different format and maybe not something that everybody can just see right off the bat, they are still crawlable, they're still indexable, the whole 9 yards. And it's another thing, it's essentially a digital thing that you can leave or give somebody, whether they're looking for you or whether it's kind of like a free gift, whatever it might be, and it might even be one of your core services. Is, hey, if you know, you can buy my ebook for $1 or whatever it might be. But those are other forms of content that you can create and put on your website. Another one, just like this one, is PowerPoints or slides. You might have some content that maybe is just easier to go through like a process format, or like this one, maybe it's more educational. There's no problem with creating something like a SlideShare or whatever it might be and then incorporating that into your website. And another thing would be like free stuff. So you could have resources, you know, you could have links or people that you like, discounts that might be on there, either on your website or maybe even discounts for other people, maybe somebody who's relevant or somebody that works well with you. And then samples, of course, as well. If you are either trying to sample a product or maybe something that you're just starting out with, you could always give samples away for free. So just to kind of recap, you know, content, it's not just text, you got to expand it, you know, pictures, videos, PDFs, white papers, ebooks, PowerPoint slides, and then anything that you might think you could give away for free. And like I said, those don't have to be anything expensive, don't even have to cost you. That could be resources for, hey, go here to learn more, or it could be, hey, you know, this guy can give you a discount if you know, go through me to get to him or whatever it might be. And then obviously you have the samples and stuff. In business card, I know that it might not sound like it, but business card is another thing that could be under free stuff. So keep that in mind, especially when you're trying to create the content. You know, think outside the box, try to create something unique and something that's really going to be tailored for you. Next one on the list would be picking something that you like to use and that you like to either do or something that you like to use. Now this is kind of in two parts, mainly for social media. Probably the biggest thing, and I know that everybody, you know, in the industry especially was like, hey, you know, you got to get on Facebook, you got to get on Twitter, you got to get on here. And the thing that I've seen, especially with you know, small businesses, even some larger businesses, is that unless you have somebody that either that's a dedicated job or it's a resource that you might have in-house, or something that you might be paying for externally, most of the time people, they lose interest, right? They don't want to do it, especially if it's you, yourself, whatever it might be. So you got to make sure that you're finding a platform that you like to use and something that you're actually going to use consistently. So social media, I can't say it enough. Find out what you use. If that's Google+, use Google+. If it's YouTube, use YouTube. If it's Facebook, use Facebook. Whatever the medium is, and whichever one you actually like to use, just, you know, use that one and then produce it. The nice thing is that with a lot of stuff like Facebook and all that, usually they can intermix. So if you do need to push something to Facebook or you do need to push something to Twitter, but it's not your favorite, you can oftentimes find programs that can either help push those, or you can actually have those programs potentially pull content from somewhere else. But they have to be able to pull content, right? So use what you like to use, and by doing that, you'll essentially create content consistently. Another one would be like blogging. Um, Sometimes you can blog on your website. I know for a lot of business owners, it's, hey, I got to have a blog, and I would highly recommend you have a blog if you don't have one. But for a lot of people, maybe a blog just doesn't really fit into their website as they have it today, or it might not be something that they want to constantly go and log into or use or whatever it might be, and that's fine. You can find plenty of other blogging platforms or plenty of other areas where you can essentially write content and then submit it for either a review to get posted or have it posted on that site. Obviously, there's a little bit of linking benefit there, but there's also more potential for user benefit as well. Posting somewhere like, like boostability.com or even like the Moz of the world as an example, by posting content into those areas, maybe even just once a month or maybe once every year, you can actually pull a significant amount of traffic from those sites because they're already getting people to their website. So it's not a bad thing to necessarily go and post on those sites and pull traffic to your website. So blogging and just kind of the smaller content creation pieces and the ongoing content creation pieces definitely fit under the, picking something that you like to, do or something that you like to use. Next one would be, making it unique. You got to make it custom to you. I've said this one in the past on one of my webinars, but you got to make sure that you're being yourself. You have your own style, whether it's like being, outgoing, maybe it's being helpful, maybe it's, hey, I'll be in the background, but I'll be the total expert if you need me. And it might even just be like a teacher role, or it might just be like a, hey, this is what I did, right? More of an artist role where you can just show stuff. Being yourself is obviously going to allow your content to really outshine everybody else and be truly unique. Not to mention it allows you to essentially get your unique view and express your business the way that you want to express your business. You might be more tame, you might be more bashful about your business, or you might be blunt, and maybe you might be prestigious. Obviously being upfront with who you are and how you work and your communication style, it might not work for some people, and usually those are the people you don't necessarily want to work with just because you're not going to have a good synergy there. But it may also open the door for people who maybe wouldn't have gone with you, but they like the way you communicate or they like your style. So there's a lot of different advantages to just being unique, not to mention it's much easier. Trying to always keep a facade of, hey, this is who I am or this is what I do. No matter how good you are at it, it's very tiresome, right? And you don't want to have that going day in, day out, especially if you're trying to run a business on top of it or just trying to create something day in, day out. And obviously, I think it kind of speaks for itself, but you got to make sure that your assets, your website, social media, any content that you might produce, and obviously your daily dealings, you got to make sure those reflect yourself. So again, just by being yourself, you're going to do that naturally. It's going to be unique to you. It's going to be your own style. But if you're not doing that today, or you're saying, you know what, this is how I really want to portray my business, try to get out of that mindset. Get into the mindset of, hey, this is my business. This is how I work. This is how I roll. And get people to essentially come to you because they like that attitude or they like that flair that you might have there. Last one for the no passion but serenity is create something that you would be proud to share over and over again. Probably the biggest thing, especially when it comes to creating content, is, hey, you know what, I just got to write a blog post, so I'm just going to create it and I'm just going to push it out there. And that is the wrong mentality. Probably the biggest thing, and I know it's helped me with my content, is the reality of how much you care about a piece is how much other people are going to care about it. So if you don't spend a whole lot of time writing a piece of content, how do you expect others to take a lot of time to read that content or to even share it, right? Take the time to actually share it. So you got to make sure you're creating content that you're going to be, proud about, and something that you personally can share over and over and over again, let's say 100 times. If you can answer that question of, hey, is this something you would be okay sharing 100 times over and over again? And you're saying, yeah, it's really well done. There's not really anything I can add to it, or I can make slight tweaks, but I can share basically the same content out there because it's so good. That's when you know that you've made a home run piece of content, that is the content that you really want to share. And you can share it in different ways. So kind of we'll take a little bit of a back step here with expanding your content. But essentially you could, let's just as an example, let's say that we have a project that we're sharing. And you could go through and in that same, because you're going to have to do it anyways, but in that same piece of, the same project that you have, you could go through and you could do like a DIY tutorial, and you could say, here's how we start, right? So we have to clean it, we have to, get it ready, and then we place whatever, and then we, kind of move down these steps to complete the project. Obviously, if you're doing that already for a customer, you're already got to go through the motions. Documenting that can obviously add things like, obviously the text. So what is the actual process via text, as well as what are the pictures? What's the step-by-step process and what does it look like? You could even do video, right? So you could also go and say, well, here's how I like to do this, or here's how I format this, or whatever it might be. And you could even, once you produce that content, let's say on your website or a blog or whatever it might be, you could create a link to your service pages, or maybe even to a city page or whatever it might be. You can essentially help funnel people that might view that project or might go to that project and go elsewhere. Obviously, if you take like a YouTube video or whatever, you can obviously optimize that, produce that on YouTube, and you can use that on the page as well. One of the benefits, especially if you're doing it right, where you're getting testimony from the client when you do that, you're rolling through the process in a DIY manner, is that you could potentially create 5 or 6 pieces of content or 5 or 6 blog posts or whatever it might be from one job. And the nice thing is that even if you consolidate all that down and you just create one really good page or one really good blog, is that depending on how you do it, you could get your employees to share it. You could get, maybe the homeowner or whoever you gave the service to, they could share it as well, because you're either featuring them or featuring their business. Who doesn't like seeing themselves on TV? It's the same mentality, right? Is that if you can create something, whether it's a video or a picture, whatever it might be, have a little bit of testimonial and say, hey, Mrs. Smith down the street, she really liked this. This is what she had to say. There's a good chance that Mrs. Smith might actually go and share that again and say, hey, yeah, this guy's fantastic. He featured me on his website. He really cares. And obviously that has a lot more implications than just content, but the content itself, at least from my standpoint here, that's what's going to help you rank in the long term and help you get more traffic coming to your website. So recap for this one, again, content, it's not just text. Expand your content, get different things in there. Pick something that you either do or something that you like to use. Don't force yourself to use something you don't like. If you don't like Facebook, don't use it. What do we do when we don't like something? We stop using it, right? Or we stop doing it. That's not what you want when it comes to social media and just being social in general. So just use what you have. Use what you like. Of course, make it unique and custom to you, and you can do that just by being yourself. Don't put yourself into a box. Don't force yourself to be something you're not. Just be yourself. Have your own style, have your own flair, and let that come out. And then last thing is, create something that you'd be proud of and share it over and over again, and always keep that rule in mind when you create a piece of content. Is this something I'd be okay sharing? If you're like, I could probably share it twice, but then I would never share it again, you probably either need to revisit that content or just not create that content right now. Create it at a later time when you can be more proud of it and be more robust, and again, share it 100 times. All right, so jumping in here. Next one on here would be, there is no chaos, there's harmony. For this one, you want to make sure that users can use your site easily. Make sure that you have enough pages to actually thoroughly help your users. You want to make sure that you create paths for your customer. So you want to make sure that they can essentially get from discovery to purchase in a logical manner, right? So as an example, that would allow you to get like hyper-specific with your content and your pages. If you have a page that, we'll go with the concrete example. If you have a page that's saying, hey, I do concrete, I do, concrete contracting, I'll do all of this stuff related to contracting or to concrete, and then you might have pouring concrete, and what that might entail, maybe it's just, hey, I bring a pull behind mixer, or we might have to order a whole truckload to come in and actually, pour it in there. Go through that whole pouring process, and then you might have other stuff from there where it's like, hey, we can actually stamp it, we can just flat out lay it, we can form it if we have to form it. And then you might have something besides that as well where it's like, hey, we can actually put some stuff where we can color it. So now you've got this path of, this is what I offer, here's the beginning step is we have to essentially get the concrete there, then here we can shape the concrete, then we can color the concrete, and then here's what it looks like maybe aftercare, right? Whatever it might be. Or, hey, if you're not sure you took care of it right, or if it's starting to chip or crack, hey, give us a call, right? And each one of those, you could have that funnel to say, hey, if either you're confused or you have more questions, contact me, let me know, and I can definitely answer any questions that you might have. Those are going to be the moments where you can really be the expert and you can essentially teach somebody. Teaching somebody is probably the biggest way to show that you are the expert and you're the one that somebody else can either rely or trust. So again, just make sure you have enough pages on your website to thoroughly help users. So second off, you've got to create navigation that is easy to use. Envision, in your mind, create a hierarchy, have pages nested where they need to be. You might even go out and see what your competition is doing, see how they might be shaping their website. They might have things maybe structured a little bit differently, and that might not be what you do, but that might be what's working. That might be how people actually want to see things, or might be the opposite. You may say, you know what, Jim down the street, that guy, he's my total competitor, and when you look at his website, he may not have a robust website, or he might have a website where you're like, oh man, that's terrible. Here's how I would structure it. So make sure you're just envisioning that hierarchy, then create the hierarchy. You can do that in Word, you can do that in a lot of different programs, you can even just do that mentally, and then have those pages nested where they need to be. Like I said, see what other people are doing, and if you need to, you can always go broader. That's probably the biggest thing, is start very specific, and you can always build outward. Sometimes it's hard to envision the broad and go narrow, but it's something that you can definitely do. And obviously, the broader you go, so if you say, you know what, I do this very specific service, and you write a page about that, and then you go broader and broader and broader, maybe to the point where you have more educational stuff. The educational stuff could get picked up and be more of a national thing. Could get you a lot of leads, could get you a lot of traffic coming in. That is great for you later on in your funnel, but maybe not necessarily for direct conversions. So again, just keep in mind, create navigation that is really easy for you and your users to use. And then the last one for this would be link internally. If it makes sense, you got to make sure that you're linking internally, especially if it makes sense and it helps users. Don't forget to create those paths that really help clients understand, either at the top of the funnel or at the bottom of the funnel, where they need to go next. I can tell you, especially just from like a user standpoint, there's nothing more frustrating than hitting a website and seeing that that page doesn't really have any purpose outside of a flat-out landing page for a keyword. But instead, if you say, here's the next step, or here's what's next, or hey, you probably want to read about this next, and having that very, pointed out and very well done for users, that's going to take your content to the next level. It's going to allow you to get more specific and more relevant with your keywords, and it essentially is going to let you show off your expertise. The one goal that I always like to have is try to get people to go 2 pages or more. So you always want to try to make sure, hey, if somebody actually comes to this page, where are they going to go? And you always want to try to have that next step very well defined for whoever hits the page, right? So if it's a blog, hey, if I read this blog, maybe there's 2 paths, right? Maybe one is, hey, going and reading more about the service. Maybe one is going and reading more about the project, or maybe one is going to the city page and saying, hey, this is actually where my location is. And maybe another path is going to the individual contact page. So, hey, if you need to get a hold of me, contact me here, whatever it might be. So, again, just make sure you're linking internally, especially if it makes sense and it helps users. And then the last one when it comes to the Jedi Code is there's no death, there is the Force. And this is probably my favorite slide of it all. Just kind of really hones in why it's a long-term SEO strategy and why you have to build so much and why you have to create so much to, at first it seems like little results. The biggest thing, like I said here, is SEO never dies, it only continues to grow. SEO, it's definitely a slow road, but it can yield time and time again. Think of it this way, SEO is slow because you're essentially creating a mountain, as an example. So the more unique and more interesting the mountain is, the more visits you might have to your website, the more people might actually come to your website. And obviously, if you have a very well-defined pass or you have some great trails on that mountain, as an example, people are going to dive more into the website. And then the other thing is you want to make sure, on your mountain that you have it for everyone. You could be, right now, you could be targeting maybe one particular audience. It might be the homeowner audience, but there's always the DIY audience too. And there might be a kid audience. I know that sounds funny, but there might be a kid audience where you're saying, you know what, this is a fun little project that gets somebody in line with what I do, or my kids thought this was fun to go and do. And obviously that connects back to the homeowner audience. So there's a lot of different ways that you can actually connect on each individual audience to really pull that together for you. And obviously on a website, if you're doing that well, that's a lot of different people that can come to your website, and that's a lot of different exposure that you can have. And the last thing, this is my favorite of all, is that if you build a mountain, it'll take a long time to erode, right? Mountains, when you look at them today, they've been standing there for thousands of years. Dare say hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions of years. So in that scenario, if you build a mountain, especially online, you can bet that it's going to take a long time for you to erode, not become relevant, and then fade away. If you're constantly adding to that mountain, whether it's small or whether it's kind of bigger time, you can imagine how you would essentially eventually become the juggernaut yourself, and you would be the one that everybody wants to be for and envies and wants to be like. And all it takes is some of the steps that we went through here. Be yourself, create unique content, get creative with your content, use projects, use different things like your locations, your people, your employees. Do all of those different things to essentially try to push yourself forward. Now there is, just like with any Jedi, right, there is the allure to the dark side. And there's a few quick things, it's a very real allure, especially when it comes to SEO. You might see something online where it's like, hey, buy 100 high PR links or PageRank links for $20, or getting 40 website pages created really cheaply. You want to try to stay away from those things. Obviously, they're not going to be as tailored to you. They're not going to be as specific. And I can tell you right now, they're not going to be as good as the competition. So to start off, you never want to buy links. Beware of anybody that talks about PageRank. PageRank's been dead as far as having external sources see it. It's only internal to Google nowadays. So if anybody says, hey, I got this really high PageRank domain, it may or may not be actually high PageRank. It could be one that got penalized a long time ago and has since then lost a lot of its PageRank, and so it might not actually be exactly what they're advertising. Another thing, you don't want to purchase links from a PBN or a publishing blog domain network. You don't want to get out there and have your content syndicated on 40 different websites. It's the same exact content. You want to try to keep it unique. Non-relevant links, you definitely don't want to buy those, so anything that's not necessarily relevant to your vertical or your industry. So obviously if it's within your industry and obviously it makes sense where the audience could connect, I think you're totally fine there. And in fact, those links could be very helpful in having some cross benefit to the user, but you want to make sure that you're not buying links that aren't relevant to you. And then the other thing, especially when it comes to buying links, is making sure that you don't have too many of the same kind of link. There's a lot of times, especially when you start looking into the SEO, that you can see like, hey, buy 1,000, directory submissions or whatever it might be. And while I don't necessarily agree that directories aren't bad, 1,000 directories are bad for sure. So you want to make sure that you're not getting the same link over and over and over again. Part of having a natural link portfolio is having a very diverse link portfolio. If it occurs naturally, you're going to get random links here and here, and sometimes that might be in bulk, but for the most part, they're going to be pretty staggered, and they're going to be different formats and different reasons for actually existing. So another one to avoid on the dark side is buying followers or likes. It's basically pointless. It's just like buying visits to come to your website. Sounds really redundant, right? And I'm going to pay to send somebody to my website or to my Twitter or whatever it might be to either like or follow me, but they're not real, right? They're not going to actually be people that are engaged, that actually share things, that actually have any interest. Most of the time it's bots, and bots aren't going to get you anything outside of you just spending money. Essentially, you don't want subscribers, or you don't want people that are following you that don't have any interaction. It's really easy to see if you see somebody that has, let's just say that they have a 500,000 followers on Twitter, yet when they share something, they get 0, likes, they get 0 favorites, and that's a pretty consistent trend. It's pretty safe to assume one of two things. Either those are all bots that follow them and fake, or the content they produce is really bad. And either of those scenarios doesn't look good for you, so don't do it. The last thing on there would probably be, when you look at social media, you got to keep in mind it's all about communication. It's not about having 1 million followers. It's not about having a huge notoriety within a certain platform. It's simply about communication. Obviously, the people that do have that, they are either doing it solely, or that's their only focus, or maybe that might be why, that might be their particular niche and what they provide. So you got to make sure that, the way I like to think about it and kind of convey it is one interaction or one, back and forth communication with somebody could lead to one sell versus 200 likes that leads to no sales. So you got to make sure that you kind of keep that in mind. You're looking for that end goal, which is having somebody buy. So it's all about that interaction. Kind of the last one with the dark side here is going to be buying thin or duplicate content. I know a lot of places, especially nowadays, especially with the world we live in, it's, hey, let me just buy the content, somebody like TextBroker or whatever it might be. You got to be aware of what you actually buy. Sometimes it could be flat out duplicate. You'd be surprised when you buy it. You got to always be using like Copyscape, stuff like that. Double check that what you're actually purchasing, if you are purchasing content, isn't duplicate and that it actually makes sense, right? You got to make sure that it actually has a purpose. If you have the opportunity, let's say you bought a website from a vendor who happens to also sell websites en masse and sell content en masse, and they have like a catalog of blogs, I would highly recommend don't use that catalog. There's no need to reproduce the same content that's been produced hundreds of times. And you can bet if it's in a catalog type area, that content has been used hundreds, if not thousands of times before. So adding it to your website, while it might fill a page, it doesn't do you any good. You might as well fill that with the filler Latin that it comes with, so that way, you can always go back through and refill it. Just it has that same impact. There's not going to be any rankability. It's not really going to help anybody. And then the last one is that if you can't create or modify whatever content, don't take it. So probably the biggest one that you might see this within is something like an MLM or multi-layer marketing or a pyramid scheme, whatever it might be. If you can't create content for it or you can't modify content that's given to you, there's a really good chance that it's getting shared with a lot of other people, and that's why you can't modify it, or that the original source has modified their version so that way their version looks the best and it's not going to be your version. So if you ever buy content that's either, like I said, thin or duplicate or whatever it might be, always second guess it and always try to make it unique to you. And probably the biggest thing is don't risk your investment. Especially with these, quick or cheap fixes, it's not going to do you any good in the end, and all you're going to do is burn your investment. In your investment, you got to think of it as, hosting, your building of the website, adding pages to the website, any links that you may have gained to that website, any trust that maybe users have built to that website, maybe even brand association to that website, and lastly, time, right? If you have accumulatively spent, let's say, 4 or 5 days in total actually building the website, that's 4 or 5 days worth of time that you'll never get back, that if you use some of those tactics, they could get you removed from Google's index, whatever it might be, and you don't want to do that for such a short-term gain, especially when it's a long-term strategy. So that's everything I got. Questions?
Yes, we actually had one come in from Andrew, and I think it's a really good question that a lot of people have on this webinar. He asked, what is the best way to ascertain which search terms people are currently using to find your website so you can optimize those terms even more?
Absolutely, and fantastic question. So obviously you can actually do that a little bit within something like Google Search Console. If you have that hooked up, you can actually go in and see, and they can give you a pretty good idea of what people are actually searching there. Tools like SEMrush would be another good one where you can actually put your website in and it will spit back what people are where you're essentially ranking as is today. If you are like more of a service or product-based business, you could actually potentially ask your users how they found you or what they used to search you. So there's a few different ways. Like I said, Webmaster Tools is a great way. You can a little bit on analytics. Obviously, some of it through Google isn't very well shown just because it's hidden. So but you could start off with Google resources like Webmaster Tools Analytics, and then from there SEMrush or your actual audience, people that are actually coming to your website.
Great, great. Thank you so much for answering that. Andrew, I do hope that that gave you a good response. I also added the SEMrush link URL to the chat, so you should be able to find it there. Another question, how best do you recommend researching your industry to come up with content?
Yeah, so kind of like I outlined with the tools there, I always like to use, not SEMrush, I always like to use BuzzSumo. That's a fantastic one. Your competitors is probably the biggest one that people most underuse. So BuzzSumo is really good for understanding content that's shareable. In some industries, content may not be your particular niche or your particular value proposition that you're trying to do out there. And so looking at your competition will really help you understand what people are actually looking for and how they're looking for it. So those are the two that I would highly recommend. It's going to be BuzzSumo for just getting more topic ideas, just more of the ideation stage. And then if you're really looking for, hey, how do I put this in practice or what is actually working today, look up your competition, see what they're doing. And it doesn't necessarily need to be competition that's direct to you. It could be competition as far as everybody is concerned. It could be competition in, in something that's maybe more popular, something like Los Angeles or Houston as an example. Competition doesn't just mean, especially when it comes to online competition, competition doesn't just mean, hey, in my specific neighborhood, in my specific city. Competition is really anybody online, so you can always look up something more broad and obviously build content from there for yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Colton. Those are all of the questions that have come through at this point. So thank you so much for presenting today, and thank you to everyone who has joined us on this webinar. We know we're a few minutes over the 2 p.m. mark, but thank you so much for sticking with us. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email us. You can email us at contact@Boostability. You can tweet us at Boostability. You can find us on our Facebook page. Feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to answer any questions. Of course, you can reach out to Colton directly on Twitter at, what is your Twitter handle, Colton? One more time.
At Big C SEO.
Big C SEO.
And I love questions. Yes,
Colton
I love
does.
questions. So if you have any questions, send them over. I can always jump on a phone if it's really technical, or we can hash it out through Twitter. Either way.
Wonderful. So feel free to reach out to him, Big C SEO. You can always reach out to me. I am the Jolly Polly on Twitter. Or of course, again, our Twitter handle, corporate Twitter handle at Boostability. Otherwise, we are going to wrap this up, but we do hope that you will come and join us for our next webinar, which will be on June 21st, and it is all about local search marketing, promoting local search marketing. And our host, I will be your host again for that webinar, but our presenters will again be Colton Miller, as well as our Vice President of Marketing, Kelly Shelton. So we do hope you will join us for that, June 21st. And other than that, we will see you. Oh, well, will we receive an email for that webinar? If you are on this email, yes, you should be receiving an email reminder about that webinar. But if not, I will make sure that I send you an email so that you have that link directly so you can sign up, okay? Now, thank you once again for joining us, and we hope we will see you on our next webinar. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.